morning everybody, welcome to Sunday. We're so busy having a look at what's on the chat about, I'm having a bit of a laugh about it now, the crown.
Top fans.
Top fans.
Yeah.
Top fans. You guys are the heroes.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what
true.
it is. So anyway.
So we'll just say a quick good morning to Gary Wilkins and a good evening to John Parra, and a message to Skip that if you can send Cole a couple of images of the panel lid and the frame, he may be able to help you off camera.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. So yeah, send me a couple of pickies and we'll get sorted with it. Should be able to get you sorted. Anyhow, you had a question last week that I wasn't satisfied with the answer that we saw on the chat, so I thought I'll answer it today for you, and we'll go from there. So what it was, and I think this is what you meant. On the top of our rebate cutter, there's a screw that I generally take off that looks like that. And you said it had a captive washer on the top. It's actually part of the screw, and that's what we use on here, right? In the older version, so if I took that off and put that one on, I would end up with that. And as you can see, the washer comes down on the top center section of the bearing. In the older versions, they look like this. And I think this is what you were saying, was that you had one of these screws, correct me if I'm wrong, you had one of these screws that did not have a captive nut on top of it.
What, captive washer?
A captive washer on the top, I should say.
Yeah.
What has to happen is you need to make sure that the top of the washer there, the top of the screw there, actually seats on that section of the bearing. So when it goes into here, and this will apply, you can't see it because of my big pudgy fingers.
Yep.
When you do it up, it should still work. It's not going to cause the washer to slip around or move or anything like that. This is the older version, this is the newer version. So if you don't have a captive washer on the top, I think that should be fine, Skip, so long as there's no movement in the washer, in the bearing. when you're using it.
So it fits neitly down on top of it,
yes,
but doesn't inhibit the movement of the bearing.
Correct. It sits in the center part of the bearing, so it sits in that little section in there. So it should be fine if you're using that. Now, the other question that I wasn't happy with, or the answer that came up, was Jake, and I don't know if you're on there, yeah, Jake.
Yeah, Jake's there. Hi, Jake.
Hi, Jake. You asked about the rulers that I was using. This one here is what we call a Luthier's ruler, and it's got the center in the zero in the center. It also has 0 to there to there. This is a CARROLL'S thing that's just come out lately. It comes out in that version. There is a longer version. This is the 600.
Yeah, that's a beast.
And so it's quite a long one. Now, they come with that little keeper on the end of it, so you can actually sit it on the end of something and you can measure from the end. So it gives you an accurate measurement. I've just taken the one off the 300 and I've put it on the other end of my 600, basically because I need something that measures from inside rather than from outside, which is what that does there. Now, the other thing is, CARROLL'S of Aura, and this is just a little bit of advertising that I thought I'd throw in as well. CARROLL'S have also put out a number of other items in the same setup. And these are some of those bits and pieces. You can see there's a number of different things, and they've all got their own characteristics. They're all good for something. They're all really well made, relatively heavy tools. So and the smaller ones are actually quite good pocket size squares and rulers and things like that. So there's those, and then there's the corner cramp that you can use to cramp something into a 90-degree angle with all the parts to it. So that comes as well. So you can actually use it for quite a lot of different things, and has quite a number of different functions. So they're also available. Now, you asked where to get them. You can get them straight from Carby Tool if you like. I know Carroll's Woodcraft Supplies, you can get them from them, because I know Jimmy's got some, so you can get them from there. Or if you really get stuck, you can contact me and I can organise to get you a set, but unfortunately freight's going to be the big killer.
Might as well go directly to...
So if you go direct to Jimmy Carroll, or you probably get a better deal, unfortunately.
Yeah, particularly for the Melbourne metropolitan people and Geelong people, it'd be cheaper.
Yep. So that's... I hope that's answered your question a little better than the few words that were actually said on the show last week. So I hope that's helpful. Anyhow, today, put the camera up, Penny. That's it.
Oh, sorry.
Out my head.
Sorry, I was reading the screen.
All right.
Sorry.
Today's show. So what we're going to do today is we want to do, we're going to cut the miters, and we're going to cut the butterflies. Now, last week I also introduced the new part to our beaut little jig. This is our mini jig, and this is the series we're working with. The mini jig comes with its 45-degree on its stop. It comes with a H20 template, for those of you who didn't see it last week. And this is the part that we've added. It's a stop, and it's designed to support your timber when you're cutting your butterflies. So basically, the original one used to be one of those, and that sat, for those who didn't see it last week, that generally sat like that, which meant you had two clamps on here, and you had all these bits and pieces. So we simplified the whole process by adding the stop, and to make it work, it's just a matter of taking the stop off.
Show the slide that it fits into, Cole. So when you're changing them over.
So this is the slide that is attached. That's what we attach our stops to. So it sits in like so. And then the same knob that you use, and now we set up to cut butterflies. So that's what we're going to use today. I'll put the other stuff aside. Don't need that anymore. Now, let's have a look at what we're actually going to do. What we did last week is, and I've done some of the work off camera, last week we built the frame panel by adding pieces of timber to other pieces of timber with a tongue and groove. I use a tongue and groove. I find it's a little bit more supportive than just sticking another piece of timber on there. Over the years, if you do just stick something together, even though the glues are really good today in today's woodworking, it still, to me, feels like it's going to fall apart eventually. So I give it plenty of support. And when you look at, this one's probably a better one to look at, You can see I've got a little gap in here which allows a little bit of movement. You've got plenty of glue surface all the way down there. It gives it plenty of support, and it's not likely to fall apart on you. So that was what we did, and what I've done is I've cut off half of the material, so there was another piece on there, and I've cut those off and brought those down to a usable size. The other thing that I did, that's just going to go on this box. The other thing I did is I cut these to length. Now when I cut these to length, I've cut them 2 millimeters longer than I actually need, so that when I cut the butterflies in it and join everything together, it's going to look a little bit like that. And I'll cut the miters on the corners, cut the butterflies in the corners. I've got a little excess around the outside that I can trim up to make the frame fit the box. Now, if you remember rightly, when we cut the rebate here, we only guessed a measurement. So all of the boxes are going to be a little bit different. So if you take your measurement off the frame that you're already working with, you can get things to fit really, really well. Instead of going through and cutting half a dozen of them all the same size, and then realising that you've got different lengths and different widths of boxes. So it's do them individually. Now another way of doing it, what we did with this one is we joined the two pieces of timber together, and then I cut the ends off, cut the side off. This one here, I didn't have enough material to actually put one piece on each of them, but I had a piece that was wide enough so that what I can do, what I've done here is I've joined the two outside frame bits. So that's one of those frames. I've joined that, and I'll put that on the other side and just put them on there, and all I'm going to do now is just cut that down the middle, and I'll have the same as that. Okay, so I'll do that first. So over to the bandsaw. Pam's going to do another little dance here. Yep. Now I've already got it set up, so it's just a matter of me cutting through there. I need my push stick.
I'm going off grid here.
So all I've done is I've got that, as you can see, I've measured up, already put the measurement on there, and then I just use my push stick and push that through. So now the reason I used the bandsaw rather than the drop saw was I didn't have a lot of material, and the blade on the thickness of the blade on the drop saw would have taken way too much material off, and all I wanted to do was just trim it down the middle so that at least I've got a nice even band around the outside. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim off the edge of it. The secret to getting this one right is you need to make sure that your pieces of timber are perfectly parallel if you have them all off, you're not going to get a straight cut along here. You're not going to get an even layout of your two pieces. So make sure that's perfectly parallel, and this here is perfectly parallel as well, so that you've got a nice even setup. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to trim the edge off, so it's just enough to take the bandsaw cuts off. As you can see, they were not quite centered on the bandsaw, or the bandsaw moved. So what I'm going to do here is just I'm going to use the thinnest piece, this one, and they'll both be the same. I'm just going to trim the edge off that, and that'll bring that one down to the right size as well. So ears on, everybody. And just run it back the other way just in case something has moved. Pretty nice. The same with this one. So now, another little dance for Pam. And now we have our 4 panels, or 4 pieces of framework, and they're all nice and even. Now, what I have to do is decide where I want my miters cut. Do I want them cut here, or do I want this stuff on the outside? It depends on the box itself. So the box that's going on is this one here, and this is my center panel. So if I put it on this way, what happens is I get a continuation of the timber up onto the lid, and then I'll get a variation of colour between the lace she oak and the rose mahogany that the box is made of. So I can probably do that. So more than likely what I have to do is cut a rebate or a trench down through there so that I can fit that in, and it gives me basically a framework to accentuate the lace she oak.
If you did the rebate in this narrow with that inlay in it,
yep.
Will it actually cut through part of the inlay?
No.
Cut right through?
The reason being, that was a very good question that Pam just asked. When I cut the rebate in here, I'm going to cut a 10mm rebate. The tool that I used to cut this rebate was a 4mm slot cutter. This one here, so it's quite wide. And so when I cut the centre one here, what I'm doing is I'm going to cut a 3.2 in here so that I've got support on both edges. Right? If I used a 4mm, I would cut that away, and that would not do me any good at all. You need to keep that support. So this is a bit wider than the trench that I'm going to cut in there.
Excellent.
Hope that's helpful to you. Let's get this stuff out of the way. I've got stuff everywhere. All right. what I might do now is I might dress these down to the right length and the right size. That's my next task. So where's my ruler? So my width across there is 160 millimeters. So the short ones have to be 164, adding 2 mil for either side. $164.
Dave Rollins said that he has bought an order of rulers and triangles,
Yeah.
and a triangle, and he said they're every bit as solid and good to use as they look.
Yeah, that's quite right, Dave. They are very, very solid, and they're quite comfortable to use. I have an issue here to start with. I've got to go into the drop saw, so let's go. Put things away when we use them. Remove that. Okay, so the first thing I've got to do is I've got to dress the ends of them because one of them doesn't look right. So I need to do that. And that's an important thing to remember. Start with something square, start with something dressed. So I'm going to cut both those at the same time. I just want to dock, I've got plenty of material to work with. I just want to dock the end off that. Now check my measurement. 160. I've cut nearly a millimetre off there. Okay. Now if you have a fault on one end, dress the opposite end to it and cut from that dressed end. I've got no faults on this one, but I've better get a measurement. So my measurement goes from inside to inside. So from inside that edge to inside that edge, 235 millimeters plus 4 is 239. Nice and flush, make sure it's square. And then you can see you can get a better idea of how big your panel needs to be, because that's going to sit there, that's going to sit there. So it's going to have a reasonable sized panel when we put it in there. And what we'll have to do is we'll have to choose, this one's going to have a piece of forest oak in it. We have to choose which part or which patterning we want to keep. If you look at the forest oak here, you can see the medullary rays are very close all up in this area here. They're a lot closer in that top half, a bit less in this one here, and they're a little bit bigger. If I tip the board over, there's significant difference in this one. There has got big, like paw prints almost, and then we've got a concentrated area there of Midori rays on that one as well. So which bit do we use? I would prefer, I think, that side.
Yeah.
And I probably cut most of this bit off and have that so it's a bit more spread out. But that's just my thinking. If I did the other way around, it would close it up a little bit. You're going to have to think about it. So, Pammy seems to think it's like that area rather than this end, so we'll work on that. But before we do that, we've got to cut our mitres and we've got to cut our butterflies.
Get to the interesting bit.
The interesting bit.
Not that it's not interesting, but this is what everybody's been waiting for.
They have, and you better put my face up on that.
Yeah. Minor detail, Cole.
Right. What do we want to do with the framework? Once we've cut the butterflies, and I've got them cut here. This one's a little bit different to the others. It's got a piece of timber on both sides of the main timber. The black stuff I thought originally was ebony, and I did some research on the timber that I had, and it's actually not ebony. This one is actually African blackwood, and there is the difference between the two. And if you want to know that, Google it. It's probably the easiest way to do it. Now, our decision here is, what do we do? Do we have one big butterfly? Do we have two small ones? Do we have a long one and a short one? It's a decision. And with this material here, because it's so nice and so good, and has a lot of variation in it, sometimes it's a good idea to do some test ones before you actually do the main ones. Now, this is what I have. I have a number of other boxes that I'm doing. This one here is just my standard H10. I have to line these up. H10 butterflies. Okay, you'll notice with the piece of timber I've rounded over the edge. I've already cut the rebate in the trench. The rebate in there for the panel. So that's what they look like. It will look like once it's done. Right. Here's another variation of that, where I've got the framework with the reverse. This is where you can play with a few of these and work out what you're going to do with it. So that's reversed. More than likely they'll have silky oak frames in. They're pretty much the same size. Here is another version of the internal one from different timbers. I'll put this one this way. So different colours will give you different ways of doing things, and and you'll have to think about how you go about them. So that's a different version. And then you get into this sort of thing. This one here, go with this one first, has got two butterflies. Now with this one here, what we have is we have a wide, they will fit together, a wide one on the outside and a narrow one on the inside. The narrow one, basically because I've got a very long, thin, narrow piece of timber that's going to be the panel, and visually it probably look a little bit better that way rather than this way, which is the reverse. of that.
So there are lots of options, aren't there?
So we have quite a few options. This one's shorter. So what I've done with this one is where the bulk of the material is, I've put a wide butterfly and a little narrow one or a little short one on the outside. So incidentally, these are all going on boxes. I've got the boxes made. So there's that. Then there is one more. And this one, if you look at the butterflies in this one, look how big the butterflies are. These are A10. This is all H10. This is A10 cutter. All I did was took all the bits off my jig and put them on my A10 jig, and I used it with the A10 cutter, and you can see the difference in the size of the butterflies. They're actually quite big. Now if you like big and chunky things like that, to me it looks out of place because it's on a small frame, but to you it may look tickety-poo, but I'm not a big fan of it. But anyway, it's just another version. So we have all those versions.
So you can actually use the B10 dovetail cutter as well, because that's been done on furniture.
Yes.
So you're not restricted just to the H series
No.
dovetails.
It does mean you'll have to fiddle around with your jig and set it up, get it all working properly. That might take a little bit of mucking around, but anyway.
But it's doable.
It's doable. So let's get on with ours, the ones we're doing now. We're doing this one here. Okay, let's go over to our drop saw and we'll cut some butterflies. Or cut some miters anyway. This. So we've decided we're going to cut the miters across this way. Okay, so we cut a 45° across here and across here. Now, remembering we had a 2 millimeters extra on the width and the length of all of those pieces. So therefore, when we put our measurements on to cut I'm just thinking about this. Yes. When we cut our miters, what we need to do, I'll get a clean one. There we go. What we need to do is measure at the end in 2 millimeters. We've got to cater for that 2 millimeter step, and we're going to cut from there we're going to cut it off there. So we have that little extra bit sitting on the end there. That will give you plenty of room for if you make a mistake, if you have to adjust a fit, you've got something to cut off. If you have it perfectly fitting and you make an error, the chances are your frame's going to be too small for the space that you're going to fit it into. So think about that when you're doing this. Okay. Let's get some of this out of the way. Now, for those of you who haven't seen this before, I have a 45° stop. It fits onto my fence, and I use my laser. You'll notice I've only marked one, and I'll move that along so that the laser is on my mark. is on my mark. Just going to make sure this is clamped in place nice and tight. Now, the gap in the saw here means that this could slip and slide back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stop on this end. So if I put my stop in here, and clamp that in, it means that I can just drop that up to there and I can cut that off. I'm just going to check to see that I've got it right. Looks pretty good. Now, let's do them both at the same time. Just making sure I'm square, flush on the ends. They're both there. Don't worry about that mark there, that was just a... Ears on. And so there's my 2mm that I have left over.
It's a bit hard to see actually. Oh, I see, yeah.
See on the end there, 2mm. We do the same on the other end. Just make sure everything is flush when we cut so that everything is exactly the same size. You could actually use those little things as a book. No, you couldn't. And the long ones, just make sure you've got them the right way around. I have cut them all wrong a couple of times. Okay, back to the desk. Okay, it's time for butterflies. So when we put that together now,
Skip wants to know, how often do you calibrate the saw to your table, or does it stay accurate?
it generally stays accurate, Skip, but I do check it every week, at least once a week. One of the big things that I hear often is people don't check their equipment regularly, and therefore come up with errors. I make a habit of making sure that all my equipment works exactly the way it's supposed to, not just the way it comes out of the factory. So I have everything sorted there, so everything works perfectly. Oh, the thing that I was going to show you there was if you hold that in place, pop a square in there, you can see that it's perfectly square, and that's where we need it to be square. And you've got a perfect joint across here as well. So now what we need to do is work out where we want the butterflies. So I'm going to cut 2 lots of butterflies here. I'm going to show you, first of all I'm going to cut this one here, and then I'm going to cut the ones into here. I'm going to put 2 butterflies in here, and I'll just show you how easy it is to cut 2 sets of butterflies and 1 set of one butterfly. So measurement, so I need to get my ruler. So where do I want my butterfly to be? Now remember, we're going to take off 2 millimeters off the edge of it. So if we measure from that mark to my center, I've got 40 millimeters. If you go halfway, sometimes I think that if you go halfway across the width of your piece of timber, it doesn't always look right. Basically because we've got something that's coming out towards the outside edge, and then there's all this material on the inside where there's nothing apart from the internal framework. So if we come back 5 millimeters, find your centre and then come back towards the centre 5 millimeters, it gives a better visual effect.
Doesn't look crowded right on the corner, the outside corner then.
Correct. It just doesn't look that, it looks a whole lot better. I don't know if you can see that mark.
Oh, camera's
then we have to mark out how long we want our butterflies. So that's where a LARK tool comes in. I'm going to set my LARK tool. Now you've got to remember that the router bit will only cut 10 millimeters, which means that the widest you can have is a 20 millimeter butterfly. I generally try to sort of err on the side of safety and set my measurements around 7 mil, which gives me about a 14 or a 15 millimeter butterfly, and that's a little easier to cut on the drop saw because it's a little bigger than 5 or 10 mil. I need a different pencil. This one's got a sharper. Okay, so my butterfly is going to come into here. Guess what? I've put it on the wrong side of the piece of timber. So let's try that again. You'll see why I say that in a second. Okay, time to set up.
It's a very fiddly part of the process, isn't it?
Yes. Okay. Now when we set this up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find an unused dovetail, and the beauty of having this new stop on here now is I can move that along quite easily and have it anywhere I like on the jig. Where's the one I marked? Here it is. And so what I'm doing there is I'm just marking it so that my mark is pretty close to centre.
Could you tilt that back just a little bit? Yes, I know you'll have to redo it.
So just make sure that that sits flat on top of the jig, and just get it set up in the middle of there.
Yep. Thank you.
And then we can slide our stop up. And now the piece of timber is set, so all I need to do is support it with this one. And if I want to change it, it's just a matter of flip it over, pop it in. To get it right. Bonza. cramp. Drop it in. Make some space. Fit my round a bit. Gosh, time has flown. Okay, so what I want to do here is I might have to go over time a little bit here, Pam.
Aussie won't mind.
There were some important things that I had to answer anyway.
Yep.
Okay, now we just set our height to our mark. So, and then we're ready to go. So, ears on everybody. Perfect little butterfly. Flip him over. So that gives me, well, my butterflies, oh sorry, it's the butterflies themselves, and they perfectly line up. And as you can see, it doesn't look that crowded now that I've brought it back towards the centre a little bit. Okay, so we mark it now. I've got very plain grain all the way around. All of my joints fit nice and neat. All of my corners are accurate. So I'm just going to go 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, and I'll know they will all go together. Now, one of the things that you find is, and I had a piece of sandpaper here, but I didn't, oh, I've lost it. get another piece. I keep forgetting I've got that on the wall. Little piece of 240, and you may find you get a little bit of tear out. When you sand that off, just be careful you don't take away this corner. Sorry, this corner here. You can see on this one here, the grain runs across here, like that. And you can see right on the tip there, there's very, very little support. So you need to be aware that that's there so that you don't actually knock it off when you're doing a little bit of sanding. So here you can see the burr has burred over there. It's just a matter of taking that off. We'll do that to all of them. This one's pretty good. Okay, so that one's basically ready for the next step, which I'll do in a second. But I want to show you now how easy it is to go into the next phase. I've lost my bits. Where are they? Here. This one here is going to have 2 butterflies. And because it's really, really wide, I want a small one on the outside and a bigger one on the inside. Alright, so I'm going to have this version, where I've got a wide butterfly on the inside where the bulk of the material is, and where it's narrower, I'll have a smaller one. So we're going to go with that version. So to do that, I need to reset my LARK tool. So the small one, I'm going to do the small one at 10mm. So I'll set my LARK tool out here at 10mm, and I did have that pencil somewhere. And the inside one, I'm going to set that at 8mm. A little bit of variation. So one's going to be quite small and the other one's going to be a little bit larger. Now to where to position them. I don't want the butterfly to interfere with the outside walnut. So let's go. The wider one can go here. And this is only a small butterfly, so I can come to about 22mm. So that should work. Let's see where it fits. So I've got a short one here, so I can do the wide one on that one. So now it's just a matter of doing all of the wide ones. I've got to readjust my height. Come up a bit. And I can go ahead and cut all the wide ones. You'll notice I've only worked on one piece, so like did all the measurements on one piece. It's easier that way. These on. Now before I go too much further, you can see on this timber here, a little bit different to the rose mahogany. You can see there's lots of furry stuff comes out of here. It's a little bit less stable. And one of the other things, you may have noticed some black stuff coming out of there. We've actually cut into where we put the rebate. So it's taken out a little bit of it, but it doesn't really matter because it's going to be locked in the miter. And we've cut through the end of it where it fitted together. Just a light sand to get those little furry bits off. You'll find that some timber's cut better than others. Just a matter of working with it. Okay, now this is the one we have the measurements on. So what I need to do now is move along to somewhere where I've got a less of a about there. this along here. It's nice and steady, nice and stable. Reset my height, so this is going to be shorter. Let's drop it down. Now the reason I don't use the same section as I did before was that there's no support at the top edge of the cut. Now this time I want the support. Got to have the support right through it. Okay. Okay, now I know it's after 10 o'clock, but I've got another task that I want to do to these before I actually go too far, but now you can see what that's going to look like. So we'll end up with two black butterflies. I'll use the same black material that I have on the front inside the frame, and that will fit together like that. So that'll look quite nice, gives a bit more detail and a little bit more character. So the next task that I'd like to do with these, when you may have seen it on these here, you can see here, whoop, lost my little cover, I've rounded over that top edge. Alright, so when the panel goes in there, it's going to have that nice rounded look about it, so the panel will fit in there and it'll roll into the panel. So to do that, I'm going to use my 504, again my small one. As I said before, and I've said it before, the router bit that we use is generally, we sell, is a 506. A little bit bigger. I don't need a big one for this task because I just want a small roll off the edge. If you don't have access to the router bit, you can always sand it by hand. But I do this before I actually cut the rebate for just do one, this one here. And I've got my top edge. Now the top edge is marked because I put numbers on them, so I know which edge I'm going to use. Just set that so that it just rolls off. What I don't want is this little step. It's just too hard to get rid of. This one away. Back it belongs. This. We'll stop after this because the next task is a quite significant setup to cut the trench along here. But we can do this one here now. I need a fence. I could just use the bearing on that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use the fence so that I get everything accurate.
You're about to say why you do the round over before you do the trench. That's to...
I do. Yeah, that's a point.
Yeah. So it's all to do with... Got to
remember to say it.
Yeah.
Once you've cut the trench, once you've cut the trench, you have no support for the timber. When you look at how narrow it is, you've got very little support there, so it's easier to cut that rebate or the round over before you cut the trench, because when we cut the trench it's just going to run straight through. So just got to make sure I'm lift it. Push block. Now, top down. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to push those straight through there. Now I would normally have the dust extractor set up on there, but I'm not going to bother with it this time because it's only one small task. If I was doing all of these sorts of things, all of my other ones, I would probably use the dust extractor if I'm doing the bulk amount of them. Okay. Okay, and now we have looks like just a nice cute little frame, doesn't it, Gary? Okay, so now we have this nice little frame, and as you can see, when we turn this over, you can see there's a fair bit of bulk in the framework here, in the internal bit, and when we round it over, it lessens it, but it still hasn't taken away the support and the structure of the piece. It just visually it makes it look smaller, so that looks quite nice when you add another piece of timber. So what we need to do now is we need to cut some butterflies. I'm not going to do that today, but all the material that I'm going to use for butterflies, and this is the material that I'm going to use, These are just offcuts from framework that I've made on other parts. They're 6mm, and the 6mm piece, and the reason it's 6mm is because the distance across here on the back end of the dovetail is 6mm. And so what I need to do is just make sure that these fit in there nice and neat, so that that fits in there into the dovetail there. All I need to do then is hold one of those together and measure my distance, and my distance there is 14mm. That's obvious, I set it at 7mm. So the width of my piece is going to be 14mm and the thickness is going to be 6mm. So I'll cut those down and I'll have those all ready for you next week. Next week we will cut the butterflies and fit them, because it's going to take a little bit of setup to actually do that. The thing that we'll be doing is we'll be using our push block. So the push block that comes with the kit, we'll be using that and our 6mm material, and I'll have the material cut ready to cut for this one here, and you'll see how pretty it looks when it's actually put together. So that's going to happen as well, and hopefully we'll be able to build a panel as well and make that. So we'll see how we go for next week. But anyway, hope you got something out of it today. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will see you all next Sunday.
Yeah. And thank you to Derek for his help today. He helped me out with a query. So,
oh, he did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see what that was.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you all next Sunday.